What is up everyone, welcome back to our channel. My name is Miles Rowe, and in today's video we'll be covering a game that is already 17 years old, a game that has aged like a fine wine, and a game that I'm sure it has changed the gaming perspective to a lot of you guys, as well as myself, over the years. So the game that we're talking about, guys, it's none the other than Bioshock. Now, Bioshock is a collection of games, so today we'll be covering all three of them, what is good about them, what has engaged so much with the community, and what made this game so particularly well preserved to be playable nowadays. So just to make this thing a bit more interesting for you guys, let's start with the game menu. All three game menus have so much uniqueness to them, they are so engaging, so kind of player orientated, that every time you start the game and you load up your last save, you'll be greeted by a new kind of style of how the game looks like. Now, what is obviously a lot more interesting is how the game advanced and how you see that in the final game, which is Bioshock Infinite, you see a much more dynamic menu, which, you know, is something to definitely look at and appreciate, because in the games nowadays you don't necessarily see this, and it's, you know, one of those things that I guess is such a nice attention to detail from the developer to just add it out there and to make the game a lot more engaging and just telling you a story altogether. So this is the first thing that we'll be looking at, the three game menus. Now, each of the menu has something hidden, and each of the game menu has another extra area that you guys can discover, and those areas are either small mini games that they are kind of an addition to the actual game, or the DLC areas. Now, also what's really nice and interesting about them, as the game got launched, it got launched with these puzzles as well and extra games, so it's just like a really nice touch to why you guys should really look back into those menus and, you know, re-engage with them if you haven't before. Now, if you're a new player, I would definitely suggest try to play the game from the beginning and then revisit this stuff in the menu. Now, also another cool thing, in Bioshock 1, for example, you would have a museum area where you can visit and see various characters and, you know, playable people that hasn't necessarily made the game, but the guys were thinking of being added. So that's really cool, and it's really nice to kind of walk around and see all these particular characters. Now, another thing that you definitely want to keep in mind is the atmosphere. The games are presenting a unique atmosphere, unique era, an era that probably none of us would have lived if the game wouldn't portray so well. So definitely one of the things that you guys will enjoy with this game is the music. The music is really well suited to the atmosphere and the playable areas of the game, and most of it you'll see has references to the early 1900s. Now, of course, all this music is music that the guys have copyrighted from real artists, but it's going really well with the entire playable world that you're experiencing. So for this, I'm gonna leave some links down below for you guys to have a look. There's some playlists out there available officially from the Bioshock team, so if you guys want to listen to those separately, make sure to have a look down below. Now, also moving on to the next chapter, this is tying up well with the kind of playable areas in the game. So if probably you want to have a certain impact on how the game is being played, this is your channel. Okay, so now let's move on to the things that probably all of you guys want to hear, the actual gameplay. Now, for me, this particular game has been absolutely amazing, and believe it or not, we grew up in an era of Counter-Strike, Half-Life, and, you know, early days of Call of Duty. So having these super violent video games around, or super aggressive first-person shooters, were kind of the norm of all the developers, and most of them were kind of aiming to progress and launch similar things. Now, what Bioshock made different was the entire storyline. I think this is probably the only game I remember playing that the storyline really caught my attention, because all the other ones were very singular, very one-lined, where you'd finish the game and that's it. But with Bioshock, everything that you'd make, every single decision you'd take in the game, you would have an impact. And I think this is really unique about it, because of course we have video games that, you know, where every decision and an action you take will have a different outcome at the end of the game. But here everything was really personable, and I think while you were progressing and while you were getting to know the story more and more, you were engaged even more into the game. And let's not forget, guys, we haven't seen in recent times games that would take, you know, good few hours to finish and to be really enjoyable and engaging. So imagine that Bioshock was offering this and was offering alternative endings, and it was making people to go and revisit certain areas to find out even more clues and mysteries about Jack and Elizabeth. So I think this is what really made this game unique. The fact that you can revisit it nowadays and still have the same passion about how to play it. So even though we are looking at 3 different games, if you are a new player, I would suggest just going and playing Bioshock Infinite first, because that's where the storyline starts, then continue with Bioshock 1, and then continue with Bioshock 2, where, you know, reverse commas where the ending is. Now, the nice thing about Bioshock is the fact that you can play each of the games and still have, you know, an idea of what happened. You don't need to play all of them in, you know, subsequent orders to finalize the storyline. You can still have one game that you play and you have a completed, you know, ending. Now, what's nice about them, they're all connected and they all have a nice storyline to them. And I remember when I played Bioshock Infinite at the end and everything was going down into Rapture, it was such a nice blast and such a nice mixture of feelings and emotions about seeing the big daddy and, you know, the little sister walking around there and you couldn't do anything about it. It was absolutely amazing. So this is definitely one of those storylines that you would want to get involved in. And as I said, if you're a new player, try to play Bioshock Infinite first, continue with Bioshock 1 and then move on to Bioshock 2. Now, one of the things that you'll probably notice is the fact that obviously it doesn't have nowadays graphics, but still I think the remastered versions are absolutely stunning, and taking in consideration that they were on the Unreal Engine 2.5 and 3, these games have held and kept really well. So also what's better to point out is the fact that everything in these worlds, it's made from scratch by the developers. So they haven't necessarily used any sort of pre-made packages that are now available, you know, for all the other game developers. They had to do everything from scratch. So, you know, hats down to them for building such a beautiful world, because even nowadays playing this game, it will still have the impact that it had when it first got launched. And, you know, there's the versions out there which are remastered, made by fans on Unreal Engine 5, and they look absolutely stunning. So I really hope that probably in the next few years we'll be seeing a similar game being launched on the Bioshock sort of universe with the more up-to-date engines. However, with this in mind, we know for a fact that the developer of Bioshock has moved on and has a new game that is going to be launched next year. The game is called Judas and looks absolutely stunning, and it's obviously very similar to Bioshock. Now, of course, his own words were that he wants to move on from Bioshock, which is completely understandable. It's a completely different gaming studio, so I do hope that Judas will have some elements of Bioshock which will make the game special as Bioshock was. But with that being said, we also are excited to see how the graphics of this game are, because given how Bioshock changed the gaming industry and community forever, I really hope that any new title that has a similarity to it to have the same impact. Especially nowadays where I think the gaming industry really needs this, especially the single player gaming communities where, you know, we don't want to focus on multiplayer too much, but want to have a really good solid single player story. And this is it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I've tried to keep this under 10 minutes, I try to give you all the facts that I had about the game and the things that I personally enjoyed when playing this game and how much it impacted my view as a gamer. Now, if you want to find out more about Bioshock, the universe, and all the lore about it, I would suggest following the Bioshock Hub. The channel has been covering content on Bioshock for years, so definitely a spot where you guys can find out more. But if you do want to play the game, you can find out the game on all the streaming platforms for a very reasonable price. So I think if you really want to give it a go, my suggestion is, as said before, and if you haven't played the game, try to play Bioshock Infinite first, then go with Bioshock 1 and then Bioshock 2. Also, don't forget to play the bonus features as well. In Bioshock Infinite, there's a round-based model, which is absolutely brilliant, and it just prepares you for the rest of the game. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching, guys. I do hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you have any other things that you would like to comment, please let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, see you in the next video soon.